Hey there, free spirits, and welcome back to Flying Upstream, the show where we celebrate the rebels, the seekers, and the truth tellers who challenge the mainstream and live their life on their own terms. Today's guest is one of those extraordinary souls who has not only flown upstream, but quantum leaped her way through darkness, trauma, and transformation. We are honored to welcome Sanar Alixandyr, an empowerment coach and woman of wisdom with a background in education, entertainment, and the healing arts. After a 30-year career as a professional musician, director, and actress, Sanar's life took a dramatic turn when she began healing from severe PTSD, uncovering blocked childhood memories of abuse, navigating 3 near-death experiences, and ultimately discovering her true identity. Through this journey, she created a one-woman musical drama called Beautiful, and most recently authored a powerful memoir called Becoming Sanar From Shadow to Light. Sanar's mission is to help others reclaim their true selves, heal deeply, and step into their authentic power. And today she's here to share the wisdom of her own story and how writing it became a sacred act of transformation. Sanar, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Thank you, thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you, Kristen. Thanks.
Amazing. Same. Okay, so let's begin at what you've described as the turning point in your life. In 1989 in Phoenix, you were a single mom, homeless, and cried at a stoplight for something, anything to show you what was wrong. So take us back to that day and tell us what happened.
Oh my gosh, it was horrible. Yeah, I was just totally lost. I was a single mom of a little boy that was my reason for living, and I just knew I was a horrible mess and couldn't make anything happen on my own. And so I just cried out to the universe, to God, to whatever, and said, "There's something wrong with me. There's really something wrong with me. Like, show me what's wrong with me." And lo and behold, I found out what was wrong with me.
And what was it?
What was it? It was my entire childhood. It was all of the it it
Small,
was
simple answer, your
it
entire childhood.
it was. It was all of the abuse that my brain and my body held on to, until I was capable of handling the truth. And so what that crying out to the universe did was called in a lot of support, and immediately my life began to take a journey on its own, and people began appearing into my life to help me out, and healers and situations. And pretty soon I was in the throes of post-traumatic stress disorder with blocked memories, um, regurgitating out of my physical body that I had to dive into one after the other until I got to the point where I could discover who I really was, the little girl that had hid away and hid away and hid away. By the time I was an adult, I had become a mask of all of the decisions and choices and fears and anxieties that I created in childhood to protect myself from all of the abuse and the negativity that was in my environment. And that little girl was just like little teeny tiny spark of light. And by diving into the post traumatic stress disorder process and enlisting the help of healers and energies and angels and multidimensionalities, I was able to find that spark of light and expand that into my true self.
That's incredible. So tell us a little more. What was your life like leading up to that moment that you cried out at the stoplight? And what was it that had brought you to your knees?
Oh, it just sucked. Every decision, every choice that I made for myself, was met with negativity, was met with, "You can't do that," "Who do you think you are? You're gonna burn in hell," yada, yada, yada. It was like everywhere I turned, even though people tried to appear to help me, they were always wrong. I just need to say that out loud. They were always wrong about what I needed. And so I finally had to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and just take the reins of my own life and go, okay, there's something wrong with me. Let's find out. So the next time I call to the universe, I'm going to ask the universe to tell me what's right with me as opposed to what's wrong with me.
There you go.
And yeah. But you know what? It was in 1989. It was a different generation. It was a different energy, and a lovely young lady healer, said, thank you for being the first wave of healers. Like we came in the 80s and 90s to break through some of the barriers of divine feminine and energy healing. And so, I am happy to be the one that dove in and dove in and dove in, because I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about how you don't have to be what you were told that you were, and you don't have to be your dysfunctions, and you don't have to be all of these things that you created to survive as a child. And you can be the light that was initially born into this dimension and into this family to do this healing.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a lesson that it does take some people a lifetime to learn. And depending on our childhoods and what we were taught and what was literally drummed into us for some of us,
Absolutely right.
it's a very difficult journey. And I want to pivot just a minute here, and we're going to
Mhm.
come back to that. But I'm really curious to know about your three near-death experiences, because I know that played a big role into your awakening and your new perspective on things too. Can you walk us through what those were like and how they helped you begin to piece together the deeper truth about your trauma?
Beautiful. Yes, I can do that. I have a question though. Do you want how it occurred through the PTSD healing process, or do you um, want me to explain what it was like at that time?
Um, the experience of going through it, and then afterwards, kind of what you took away from it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That helps helps me clarify what part of the story we're talking about. So, just as a precursor, the post traumatic stress disorder blocked memories that were resurging did not occur linearly. They occurred in order that I could handle it as a human being. So when I started having this memory or that memory, and my body would just explode into, a situation, I got used to, like, okay, this is my body giving something up that I experienced, that I blocked, and I'm going to dive in and I'm going to see what it's all about, and then I'm going to release it. And at the end of each experience, I got what I called an aha, like, oh, that's why. Yada yada yada. At the age of 9, I was abducted by two men in a car, and they used my hair to control me. And as a 9-year-old, I decided that if I had short hair, they would not have been able to control me. Now, that's not true. But I had very, very short hair through my early adulthood. So, linearly, as a child, at the age of 2, my father threw me up against the wall for who knows why. I was probably being a 2-year-old. And I popped out of the body and had a very clear consciousness that was floated up to the ceiling. And I looked down, my consciousness looked down, and I saw what I described as a rag doll on the floor, and my daddy standing over the rag doll. And I was greatly confused as to what this was. And then my daddy kicked the rag doll, and I was sucked back into the body. Immediately blocked all memory of that situation. But my 2-year-old brain said, daddy's dangerous and I'm not safe. Boom, shut down. I shut down. That was the first gift, actually. And that's where I realized that I was not a body. I was not a human. I was not this. I was whatever that was that floated up to the ceiling. And so I tucked that part of me away, that little girl. And by the way, her name was Linda, and Linda means beautiful in Spanish. And so I tucked Linda inside someplace really safe and kept her away to protect her from the dangerous world. And then set about, you know, negotiating life as best I could as a child in a completely uncontrollable situation. So that was number one. Number two, at the age of 9, I was I was walking home. We lived kind of out in the woods, and walking home from the school bus, and a guy in a green car stopped and asked for directions, and I went up to the window and started to give him directions. And you know what happened next? They pulled me into the car and took me out to the woods, and um, sexually abused me, raped me. It was a terrifying and horrible experience. And I fought like a banshee. I screamed, I yelled, I kicked, I scratched. I did whatever I could to try to fight in this situation. And I eventually lost my life, choked to death, unable to breathe, and went down a dark tunnel. Started going down a dark tunnel, and it felt very cold and very scary to me. And I remember seeing like newspapers, like I was going down an alleyway, like cold, dirty newspapers, things flying around. And I did see a light at the end of this tunnel, and I was pulled in that direction, but I was afraid to go there. I was scared, so I turned around and came back, and I hid in my third eye until they were done with the body, because I had already programmed myself that I'm not this body. So, have at it. You can't touch me, because that's not who I am. And I hid in my third eye until they were done and left the body out in the dirt. And I remember consciously breathing back into the body while they were out having a cigarette. And they took me home, threatened me with, we'll kill you, whatever, what abusers do. And by that time, I was just shut down. Now, this was at the age of 9. So we have 2 and we have 9. So that is a 7-year experience. But what that set up was, I was afraid to go to the light. I was afraid to leave the abuse that I knew. I was afraid to leave, by the age of 9, this was normal in my household, people abusing you. So it's a stranger, no big deal. And so I went home, didn't tell anybody, blocked all memory of it. Hated the outfit I wore that day. I thought that was very interesting as an adult. I remember what I was wearing, and I hated it after that. And I had picked it out because I thought I liked it before the situation happened. Fast forward to age 16, and this is somehow I was in the back of a pickup truck in the middle of the woods, and not quite sure how I got there. By 16, the conscious me was pretty much totally checked out, and the body was just going on living, because it didn't seem to have any choice in the matter, whether I lived or died. So somehow I awaken, and I'm in the back of this pickup truck and choked again, and sexual abuse and whatever. And I'm leaving the body, and I'm like, woohoo, I'm out of here. So I'm floating up. My consciousness is floating up above the trees, and I'm so excited that I'm done. I'm just thrilled. My spirit is just like soaring. And I encountered 2 what I call angels, a pink one and a purple one. And they were greeting me, and I thought, oh, I'm done. I'm home. I can go. I don't have to go through this anymore. Like, I'm free. Like, I'm just like almost crying. If I had tears in a body, I would be free. And both angels like pointed back down to the body in the back of the pickup truck and said, you have work to do. And floated up there and argued with them for quite a while, actually. I'm like, "No, I'm not going back there. These people suck." Like, "No, like, I don't want to." And so, but when 2 angels point back to the body, you really don't have a choice. So I got sent back to the body, and I immediately blocked all memory of it. I immediately, like, just shut down even more, which then set me up as an adult, as an adolescent, as an adolescent and an adult of abusive relationships, sexual misconduct, in left home as soon as possible, just could not, just running. I'm just going to say running. I'd try to do relationships and I'd just end up running because I just couldn't accomplish anything. So I did that until my son was born, and I had to be responsible for somebody other than myself. And that was an important motivation to be a better person, to not be such a mess, because I would and it was a strange lady. One day I was being yelled at by my current boyfriend, and my 2-year-old was in the back seat, and this lady said, "Is this what you want your 2-year-old to see?" And I thought, "No, this is not what you can do it to me. I don't care. I'm used to it, but this is not how you want to raise a child." So that, I think, was a very strong impetus for moving into the healing arts.
Wow, that
Oh.
oh my gosh. First of all, thank you for sharing that story, and
Mm.
I I wanna just acknowledge and show so much respect for the terrible, terrible experiences that you had to endure, and just in just sheer amazement, and I'm in awe of you, Sanar, because you have come so far that you are able to speak freely of this and see it as moments in your life that you learned something, that you said at each time you learned something, and you even refer to it as a gift, which is just beautiful. And so I love that you are able to say, hey, this happened to me in my life, these a lot of abuse, right? A lot. And that's not going to stop you. Once you had your child, everything changed.
Yes.
You realize that you can't keep going down the same path. Now, you've said that your memories of the abuse didn't come back to you all at once, that they kind of came when you felt you were strong enough to face them. What was
Yes.
it? I'm assuming that was after you had your son. Is that right?
Yes.
So what was it like for you to uncover and relive those moments, especially the memory of what happened to you at just 2 years old?
And that was, whew, I'm feel thank you so much for your compassion and your kindness. I really appreciate that. The 2-year-old memory was actually was the last memory to present itself. It was the first near death experience, but it was the last memory. I had to go through everything else. This is the long, hard way. We don't have to do now. We can quantum leap, and it's really cool. But in those days, it was just trudging, back to who I really was and what I came here to do, and why all of these things happened to me. So, I can say, if I hadn't had that first experience of just being popped out of the body, this was, oh golly, I'm sorry, but this was before the rapes. This was age 2. This was like boom, boom, I'm out. Ooh, I'm not a body. Cool. You know, oh, I'm back in a body. And so when people were abusing me for whatever reason they needed to do so, I could detach. I could make myself a cloud. I could be a dragon. I split into different energies. And so, the first experience, had I not had that one before I experienced all of the physical traumas to my body, then I would not have been able to, first of all, escape to that. And second of all, identify as that energy. Like, I'm that energy. I'm not who you think I am. and I'm not going to let you see who I am because that little girl is tucked away so far, you'll never get to her, right? Because we have to keep her safe. But then when my son came, it was like, oh, here's a child outside of me that I need to keep safe and I need to take care of. And so life kind of does these weird things to you, doesn't it? It's like, here's somebody outside of you that you need to take care of. And in that, the little girl inside of you is going, yes, thank you. Nobody did that for me, right? And in that moment, you get to transform the genetic inheritance, the experience. My father had a horrible childhood, horrible abusive childhood. He didn't have any skills to love or care, and my mother was raised by a single mother during the Depression, and so she didn't have any skills to take care of children. And so I was raised in an environment of complete dysfunction. And how can I, why am I here? And when the angels send you back, you kind of have to think at that differently. Like, oh, all right, evidently there's a reason I'm here, and I need to find out what that is for myself. And that set me on the path of working with energy healers and learning how to manipulate energy and use all my checking out, use all that those skills that I engaged to check out. I needed to use them to check into this now.
Yes. So tell us more about that. How help or excuse me, can you explain how energy healing worked for you and what it did to help release those trauma blocks?
Yes. Yes, I can. Let's see. So I like I said, life began to occur basically without me, which kind of it did anyway. But good things started happening to me once I called out to the universe to find out what was wrong with me. And a wonderful lady who became my friend, who was an energy healer, uh, took me on as a client, and she was the one that worked with my energy fields. And I remember very clearly, she was a single mother, had a single son, and so we kind of would hang out together. And then one day she said, I know this technique and I'd like to practice it on you. And I didn't know how to say no, so I said, sure, how long will it take? And she said, oh, about 5-10 minutes. And I said, what are you going to do? And she said, I'm just going to run my hands over your physical body and I'm going to feel for warm spots. I'm like, okay. So, okay. And so she did that. And kind of like when there's a doctor or a dentist or something and they go, it's not what you want to hear. Right.
Right.
And she said, like, she said, your whole body is warm. It's like not a healthy warmth. Like your whole physical being is, whacked. And I was like, well, I could have told you that. And by her channeling divine light energy into my physical presence, which was totally blocked because the little girl was over there, um, my body began to absorb that positive energy. And as a result, it began to give up all of the blockages that I had created as a child, as an adult, as for safety and protection. And once my system got that, it was like, woohoo, let's go. So it took more than one session in my case because it was so extreme. So it was many, 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 many hours, and it was multiple sessions until I got used to the process of the body giving up these memories, and how to handle it myself. So I didn't need a therapist anymore. I didn't need to go to someone to fix me. It's like, oh, I can feel one coming. It feels like kind of like you're getting the flu. Like everything starts feeling like in the olden days we used to have snow on the television, like And so I would lay down on my bed in a safe place and put my hand on something metal and solid, And so I could let this memory up because my system would just re-experience the whole thing. If I was 9, I was 9. I was screaming, I was rolling, I was whatever occurred at at the inception of the memory is how the body released it. So I was going through it, and part of me is going, wow, this is really weird. Wow, look at this. And so I had that capability to observe the systems releasing it. And then when they got scarier and scarier, I would tell myself, okay, I obviously didn't die because here I am, right? And then lo and behold, I remembered dying. I'm like, oh man. Just like, are you kidding me? Okay. And so it's just seriously, it's like, okay. So then once the memory reoccurred, then there was a heaviness, a darkness in my systems. And so I was able to release that because we had already practiced that. And then there was the aha, oh, this is why, like the 9-year-old going down the tunnel and coming back, this is why you don't complete anything, right? So you're afraid to go to the light, to the goodness, because you're so used to the darkness. Oh, okay. So now I can let go of that mentally and bring in more of that little girl's light and help her expand and expand and expand until she is present and the darkness is gone.
Gosh, I'm so inspired by you right now because I can imagine that it took a lot of time and effort and work to have these experiences where you're unblocking and releasing that trauma. And I'm actually curious to know too about your creative work and how that, separate from the energy healing, how that played a role in it, because you've always been an artist, but I know you
Mhm.
resisted writing your own story. Um, Tell us a little bit about why and what shifted for you when you finally brought beautiful into the world.
Oh, you are so sweet. That's so kind. Thank you. Music was the only place I could exist. It was the only place where I felt I could express my real self, and it was in doing music from age 5 on. It was the only place that was mine. The rest was the rest of the world, and so that kept me going and being able to feel those emotions and I didn't like performing, but I needed the process of music to keep me going. So, so yes, when I was going through the PTSD stuff, I was not working consistently. People were threatening to take my son away from me. I was, it was a crazy time, and it was a long time. And it was, but I felt compelled. There was like, no, I'd asked. So like I was determined and committed to whatever this was about, to being, people would say, why are you doing this? I said, because I have to. I have to. There's just, I'm not living the way I used to live anymore. We're not doing this anymore. So whatever I need to do, let's do it. So one of my favorite quotes that I made up is, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not stop and pitch a tent. It's like, keep going. You just keep going, that kind of thing. So, once I got to a point where I felt really good about myself and I felt good about who I was, like, oh, I feel good about myself, but I felt like me finally. I'm 30 something years old and single mother, and I finally feel like me. And so I wanted to share what I had learned through my experience, because I didn't know of anybody else that was doing this. you know, why would they? you know, but I wanted to share what I got out of it, what I learned, and to inspire women, because historically, it's just been abusive of the divine feminine. And so I wanted to assist women in discovering their own light. And so I approached a venue that had a neat little stage kind of thing. And I said, I want to do seminars with women. I want to share, da 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 da. And they were like, well, you're just a singer. Like, what do you have to say?
Uh-huh.
And I would say, well, la 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 la, my abuse and 3 near-death experience and post-traumatic stress and healing. And they were like, oh my gosh, that's what people need to know. It's like, I don't want to. That's like, that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the goodies at the end, as an inspiration. And so being an artist, the only way I could see myself presenting this story in a non-threatening way for people, because it's like wah 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 wah. I didn't want to be whining about my past. It
Mhm.
was like I was fine. So I put it into a play, a one-woman show. And so I wrote all the music, and named the little girl Beautiful, because Linda means beautiful. And so, it was intended to inspire people. The angels sing to the little girl, telling her she's beautiful and strong, and someday she'll find out why all these things happened. When you're in the middle of trauma, it's just sucky, everywhere. And so it's very difficult to hold the light when you're going through this darkness. Another thing I wanted to share was the power of your mind, like why you create these things to protect yourself and to keep yourself safe. And there are times where you can let all that go. You don't have to be that identity. And, in the story, in the real story, in towards the end of my healing, I was trying to get rid of Linda because I always hated that name. And I thought, well, she's the poor little girl that everybody heard and wah, wah. I didn't want to whine about it. It's like I was trying to get rid of her, to be perfectly honest. And that was when I was gifted with the name Sanar, which means to heal. And Alixandyr means helper of mankind. And I was like, okay, that's who I want to be. Yeah, that's what my spirit feels. My spirit resonates with that and feels aligned with that name. And so I wanted to choose that name. But Linda wouldn't let go. She was like, she wasn't going anywhere. And I thought, no, we need to deal with this. And so I promised her that I would tell her story. And then she would let go. And
Mhm.
so the book Becoming Sanar, is her story as told by me. Yeah. So it originally was a play and a musical drama, and I acted out how I dealt with the pain and the abuse and splitting into different animals, and it's like how much this hurts a little child, and how much I am not not what hurt me. But the audiences were traumatized by it. So, I have the music, I have the recordings, I have, it was also an avenue for me to let go and for me to process the reality, because everybody tells you you're crazy. Everybody says it's not real. It's not, we don't know what's wrong with you. Can't you just get over it and get a job, that kind of thing. And it was like, no, this is me. This is what I've got going on. This is real to me. So I'm going to work with that on my own.
Wow, you really come a long way, to say the least. And what a beautiful moment for you to not only have the, I will call it, like, emotional transition into a healthy place that you are now, but to actually change your name too, to really embody a different person completely, just to really drive it home that you're not that little girl, that you really are healing, you are really helping mankind and really taking those steps forward. And as we kind of wind down here, I've got one last question for you.
Yes.
Uh, and Sanar, I know that you've walked through fire. You have faced death 3 times, if not more, and you have emerged fully yourself more than ever.
Mm.
If the little girl inside one of our listeners is still hiding, still waiting to be seen and loved, what would you whisper to her today?
It whisper, I love you. I love you. You know, the very first song that I wrote was called I'll Be Your Champion. I don't know if I could sing it anymore ever again, but I'm here to help. I'm here to help you. And so never give up. Never give up. Because the little girl holds the magic. The little girl holds the light. The little girl, you know, people talk about inner child work and yada, yada, you know, and we're not talking childish. We're talking the pure divine essence of the, I'm going to say the divine feminine, but I don't necessarily mean girl. You know, it can be that beautiful, creative, receptive, wise, intuitive self is in that little spark of light. And I would be, you know, we love you and we're so excited you're here. So never give up.
That's just so beautiful. And I think a message every child should hear, no matter what.
Yes.
Beautiful. Well, Sanar, thank you. Thank you so much for your
Mm.
courage, for your voice, for standing in your truth, for all of it. Your story is not only one of survival, but it's a blueprint for transformation. And to our listeners, our free spirits, if today's episode stirred something in you, follow that. Your healing journey is sacred, your voice matters, and there is another side to the pain. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and of course, keep flying upstream.